Now that we've done the girls, let's move on to the lads. As it's a legendary double act, I will cover both of them right here. Joey and Chandler. These two were like the adult version of Bert and Ernie, two characters from the show Sesame Street. Go Google it, kids. They were roommates from the get-go, and they were involved in a lot of shenanigans which ultimately shaped their friendship. Joey was an actor and a ladies' man with a very small brain, hence his dim-witted antics and lines, and he gave Phoebe a run for her money sometimes. It's funny because given the similarities in their personalities, I always thought Joey and Phoebe would become a couple. They did kiss once as they were trying to find out if Joey was a good kisser, but nothing happened. Chandler, on the other hand, was the epitome of sarcasm, full of sarcastic jokes and his dry wit, which in my opinion made him the funniest of the bunch. He was awkward and the complete opposite of a ladies' man. This brings along his on and off girlfriend Janice into the picture. From the first time she's introduced, Chandler is doing everything possible to break up with her, but fails miserably until a quick and snappy intervention by Phoebe helps with the initial breakup. During a blind date, Joey and his date set up Chandler with a mystery girl, who turns out to be Janice. And after a few drinks, the two end up in bed together. But Chandler again is trying to break up with her, and during a talk, Janice goes along with it, and they go their separate ways, but teasing him that she'll wait until he's ready. Chandler has started an online relationship with a mystery woman who ends up being Janice. But this time the two end up together properly, and it lasts for a run in season 3 until Janice cheats on him and the two break up again. They reconnect in season 4, but it's back to the old Chandler routine of not being able to stand her. Chandler ends up having to hilariously book a flight to Yemen just to escape her. Whilst he was not always lucky with relationships, he did manage to hit the jackpot by ending up with Monica, as was being hinted to earlier. Now, whilst Joey and Phoebe had similar characteristics but never got together, it was different here with Monica and Chandler. After their one-night stand in London, it turns out it was more than a drunken one-night stand. They developed real deep feelings for each other and began a relationship. As this is the world of Friends, it was not smooth sailing. They decide to hide the relationship and they end up sneaking around until Joey, of all people, figures out the two have been having a secret relationship. He's happy for them, but he's made to keep it secret. But unfortunately for Joey, their sneaking around leaves him looking foolish, and it proves too much that he almost spills the beans until he decides to turn around on the new couple by saying that he slept with Monica. Ross was, as you can imagine, very pleased. Rachel was next to discover that the two were having a secret affair and tries to confront Monica about it, and Monica promptly lies. Rachel decides to leave it for now, but at this point it was as if Chandler and Monica were begging to get caught because next in line to catch them out was Phoebe. Now, along with Joey and Rachel all in the know, they decide to have some fun with Phoebe, hilariously trying to seduce Chandler, who eventually caves and lets everyone in on the secret. So the whole group was in the know, except for Ross, for a short time, when in that same episode, he caught the new couple in the act. He confronted them too, and they let him in on the secret. After a funny pause, he accepts them. So now the circle is complete. I did say this relationship surpassed Ross and Rachel's relationship, and what I meant by that was from a longevity and a stability point of view. The two did everything in order and progression. After getting together, they eventually moved in together. They got engaged in an emotional story arc involving Monica's first real love, Richard, played by Tom Selleck. They got married, eventually left Monica's apartment to move into a new place while raising their newly born kids. With all the Monica and Chandler stuff, I've got to finish up on Joey. Like I said, he was an actor on the soap Days of Our Lives as Dr. Drake Ramore. Yes, he was a ladies' man, but he too had his little story arcs. Like the time he stopped talking to Chandler after a girl he dated, Kathy, dumps him for Chandler in an interesting turn of events. Joey eventually forgives and lets Chandler be with Kathy, until she eventually cheated on him too. Clearly neither men were meant for her. Cheating cow. After Chandler moves in with Monica down the line, Rachel and Joey end up as roommates, and this set up the prelude to one of the most unlikely romance arcs. Living with Rachel, Joey begins to warm to the idea of settling down, and during season 8, with Rachel's pregnancy... Wait, what? Chill, I'll get to that later too. During season 8, with Rachel's pregnancy, Joey slowly begins to develop feelings for Rachel, but out of loyalty to his friendship with Ross, decides not to do anything. But those feelings get stronger and stronger, and he decides to tell Ross about his feelings. Initially, Ross is not up for it, but reluctantly he gives Joey his blessing. Joey then tells Rachel, who is stunned by this, and after a hug to accept that it's just going to be friends and nothing else, things get a little hilariously awkward. Once the mess is cleared and they slowly get back on track, but things don't end there. During the finale of season 8, after Ross and Rachel almost get back together, but don't, Joey walks in and discovers an engagement ring from Ross's jacket, to which Rachel sees this and thinks Joey is proposing, leaving the show on quite the cliffhanger. Leading to the opener of season 9, in which Ross comes back to find Joey and Rachel alone, but unaware of the proposal. What follows is a very chaotic and bumpy ride. Rachel thinks Joey proposed and said yes, even though he doesn't really want to. Ross thinks he and Rachel can start things up, and Joey thinks Rachel wants to marry him, even though the proposal was an accident. And he doesn't even say anything, leading to a three-way confrontation, which reveals the accidental proposal. Ross wanting to start things back up with Rachel, and then discovering that she said yes to Joey's proposal, leading to Ross blanking Joey, which descends into a funny showdown between the two guys as Ross gets punched accidentally in the face, and then he accidentally punches a lamp. They call a truce and clear the air, and Ross and Rachel live together and raise their new baby. But sadly, after another fallout, Rachel leaves Ross's place to go live with Joey again, and this time Rachel develops feelings for Joey, but he doesn't reciprocate this time around. Enter Charlie, a paleontologist just like Ross, who ends up dating Joey instead of him during a trip to the Caribbean for the season 9 finale. Charlie and Ross end up making out, which paves the way for Joey and Rachel to finally get together. Ugh, I hated this storyline, it really was not good. Enter season 10, Ross feels guilty about getting together with Charlie and he seeks Joey's approval, to which he's okay as he's feeling guilty about getting with Rachel. Unable to tell Ross about their new relationship, Joey and Rachel carry on in secret until Ross catches them in the act, leading to Ross not taking it very well. And this ends up in a funny and awkward scene of Ross getting drunk and acting out. After recovering, Ross is finally on board with Joey and Rachel, and they both go about their relationship, which lasted all of one episode. After a series of failed attempts by Joey and Rachel to sleep together and it failing miserably, they decided that they were much better off as friends. Which begs the question, why did we have to have this story arc to begin with? It just did not feel right whatsoever. Even the actors themselves were not really comfortable with it. Not a great highlight for me personally. Best buds, goofy buddies, best friends. Joey and Chandler, a true bromance. And that wraps up part 2 of the dynamic duo, but up next is the most complicated roller coaster of a love story, the Friends main event, Ross and Rachel. I'll see you in part 3.